Welcome to the FWA, where I'm delighted to be joined by James Olley, the chief football correspondent of the Evening Standard. He spends a lot of his time covering Arsenal and a real challenger for the top four. Emerged on what was a fantastic night at Arsenal, wasn't it? But we want to, and you made it very clear, the one thing you wanted to start with today was this: racism.
Well, we don't
want
to have to talk about it, but unfortunately, when something like that happens, it does overshadow what was the best match of the season by some distance. I was looking at sort of some of the reaction to it today, and a few people have reproduced that picture of John Barnes sort of backheeling a banana off the pitch, and that was taken 30 years ago, and yet here we are still having to deal with something like this in 2018. You know, the game's taken in this country, I think, good strides to move forward and try and stamp this out, kick it out, obviously do a lot of very good work. But if this had happened in any other country, you know, the English press, we'd be the first to call this racism, to call it what it is. And every step needs to be taken to eradicate it. I'm just amazed that it still goes on.
We've also seen a fantastic documentary in the last week put together by Ian Wright, which really... So often we hear this, don't we, from Stan Collymore, from Ian Wright, from so many people in the game, that we believe we're making a difference on racism, but if you're not black, you can't appreciate that actually we haven't come far enough, and this really is a sad indication of that.
It is. You know, one thing to say, I think, here is that football inevitably reflects society, and there's a wider societal issue. You think about things like Brexit and immigration rows and all these sort of things. And the abuse on social media, and Kick It Out's own figures have said that the last 6 years discrimination or reports of discrimination have gone up year on year. You know, this isn't a problem isolated to football, but football does have a framework and a responsibility to try and deal with this as strongly as it possibly can.
Immediately, Tottenham, straight out right, we'll find and ban the player. That's exactly the response you want. Unai Emery just couldn't believe what he'd seen, speaking about it today.
Yeah, look, Tottenham have done the right thing. The individual in question was arrested. An investigation will follow, and I'm sure he'll face a lengthy ban, if not a life ban. I think a point that Liam Rossini has made elsewhere today is that, you know, this is about education as much as anything else, and that just banning somebody so that this guy, if this is reflective of a view that he widely holds, is just going to go and air that in another forum, well, that doesn't actually get to the root of the problem. Not only do we need to eradicate this from football, but also educate people to understand the fundamental fact of why this is wrong. I mean, again, it's incredible that we feel we have to do that in 2018, but clearly there's still a need for it.
What do you think is the next move forward? Just keeping vocal about this, or would you like to see something more happening and point out the work that Troy Townsend, everyone at Kick It Out have done is immense?
Look, I mean, it's two things to say. One is zero tolerance is absolutely key. And I think the punishments are getting stronger. There is, the reaction to this, I think, has been good in that it's just been wholesale, widespread condemnation of it, and that's good. The second point is that this needs to continue. We see these things sort of flare up like lightning in the night sky. You know, we all see it for a couple of days, and then it goes dark again, and then there's no sort of discussion about it, and the issue kind of goes dead. We need to kind of continue to bang the drum for this, because clearly it's still necessary.
It is. Troy Townsend has a lot of work to do this week to follow up on that. He did watch his son score an absolutely stunning goal. That was a beauty. We'll talk about English players doing very well this weekend in a moment, but let's look at this. I think Neil Ashton calling it history class. Emery's Gunners are like the heroes of old, and then not the only one to look back on the past. Torreira, the best since Vieira?
Well, Lucas Torreira in many ways encapsulates the evolution of this Arsenal team, because he is a player that they have been crying out for probably since Patrick Vieira. That kind of combative defensive midfielder, but also he's more than that. You know, his first pass is forward. He's very influential in the transition between defence and attack at Arsenal, trying to get the ball quickly into their attacking players. He's got an eye for a pass, and now we found out he's got an eye for a goal as well. He scored his first Arsenal goal, and the fans have taken to him, and really he embodies a lot of what Emery's trying to bring to this team, a new resolve, a new work rate, and a new dynamism and industry about them, and just a passion that really resonated around the whole stadium yesterday. It was one of the best atmospheres that the Emirates has had for a long time.
It was very special, wasn't it? And Sam Dean talking about how Emery's changes really helped the team thrive. He's not afraid to make substitutions at half-time. It's not a thing you do typically in English football. It seemed as a bit of an offence to that player, but he made it clear today that that wasn't the case. He just wanted to make those tactical changes. And players like Mesut Ozil are going to have to just suck up and play his way, aren't they? He's making it very clear.
Yeah, Sam is one of a number of writers to pick up on this, and it's a very salient point. Yesterday was the 7th time that Unai Emery's made a change at half-time in a match, and for context, Pochettino's only done that once this season, and that was enforced. That was when they had 2 injuries at Huddersfield in September. So he's one of the most proactive managers. Real contrast with Arsene Wenger. You could virtually set your watch to his substitutions. It was always by the hour mark, almost no matter what the circumstances. And yeah, with Mesut, this is a situation where somebody who earns 350 grand a week and that at a much higher level than anyone else at the club, financially it sort of demands that he plays, but Unai's made it quite consistent from the get-go really that he's not only is he not going to build his team around Mesut Ozil, but he's not going to tolerate any drop in performance or attitude. And while there's the official explanation of back spasms, we've known in the past that that's an injury that he's supposed to have had. There's also the illness that has been used as an explanation as to why he's not playing in games that perhaps we thought of. But I think most significantly, if he's going to play this back three going forwards, a sort of 3-4-2-1, the 2 attacking midfielders in this position, in this system, he likes dynamism, he likes legs, he likes energy, and you don't always get that from Mesut Ozil. And he likes defensive discipline and responsibility, and again, you don't always get that from Mesut Ozil either. So Mesut's a great player on his day, he's a world beater, we all know that, but he's got a fight on his hands to prove that he's a real key part of this Emery revolution.
Talking about revolution or going forward, let's look at England and some of those performers this weekend. Maddison with an absolute cracking game. You've got Ruben Loftus-Cheek scoring as well, and then you've got the draw. We now know today that England face the Netherlands in the semi-final of the Nations League, and Matt Wilson in the Mail talking about Gareth Southgate also saying that this team basically have, or in Matt's word, a golden ticket in their group.
Yeah, and
Euros.
And the Nations League gives them another avenue to get. Obviously, gets another avenue into the Euro 2020, but it just gives them something else to work towards. It helps maintain this sense of momentum. I think that's been the biggest thing about Gareth Southgate since the World Cup. Whenever you see tournament cycles end, they tend to finish with a big inquest and then a high turnover of players, and they're sort of chucking out the old ideas and bringing in the new. But what he's done is he's just tweaked the squad. He's brought in the likes of Jadon Sancho, Harry Winks, 1 or 2 others who weren't involved at the World Cup, and just kept that sense of momentum, of positivity moving forward. Both the draws are inviting. There's nothing to fear for England, and while we might have thought that 2018 could have been the peak for England, 2019, 2020, it could get better yet.
And it is so exciting what's happening to the players that are being brave enough to go out to Germany, who are really excelling and really being lifted up with so many options to come forward. We've got Wan-Bissaka, we've got Reece Nelson, there's so much to be.
Yeah, there are. I mean, Jadon Sancho had another great game for Dortmund this weekend. So, I think also these players are enthused by the possibility of actually getting in the team now. I think there's a couple of things are happening here. One is that they see a route to the team. It used to be under previous managers that if you weren't playing for Man United and Man City and Chelsea and Arsenal, the biggest teams, you weren't really going to get a look in, certainly in terms of the starting lineup, but maybe even the squad. But now, Gareth's quite happy to go and pick from outside the established order, and you don't necessarily need to be. If you're old enough, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And if you're playing well enough, you can get into that England squad and even get into the England team. And that is a huge incentive. And everything that they did in the summer, the sort of more transparent, we were both saw it firsthand, the greater transparency, the willingness to engage. They've created something that people who weren't there want to be a part of.
Because Gareth develops players and gives them confidence.
Yeah, and they enjoy themselves now. For years we talked about the weight of the shirt with England and the pressure and the responsibility. And I think also, that was during an era when our top sides were fighting for Champions Leagues. And you had the vast majority of the squad was made up of 2 or 3 teams that were fighting just for the Premier League. But now you've got players in there from mid-table teams and And like you say, it seems that players that have gone abroad who aren't necessarily fighting for the top honours, so they think, well, actually, I go to play for England. This is it. This is the biggest thing. It's not just a sideshow. It's not just a distraction.
Could we get a domestic airport to Burton because of all this excitement?
Well, let's hope so. if anyone wants to crowdfund that
would be amazing, thank you. Gareth, you can do most things. Let's look to the rest of the results at the weekend. And Chelsea and Alison Rudd here with a piece on the Kante conundrum. Again, the player that pulled the strings, the player that Ranieri had developed so well at Leicester, yet Sarri is still questioning if he's quite the perfect player. It's remarkable.
He's tweaked something that didn't look like it needed fixing.
Yeah. And football fans among us all.
Well, the minute you don't win a game and you change something that looked perfect, that looked obvious to the layperson, or even the media, where the lay people really just as well in terms of being fans. But the minute you change that, and you don't win games, you start to think, well, hang on a minute, why is that happening? And Jorginho's a very, very good player going forward. It was something that me and Simon Johnson, my colleague, actually we wrote about this right at the start of the season, that by shifting Kante out to the right of the three, you're turning the best player in the world in his position to a very good central midfielder, box-to-box midfielder. And Jorginho, to do that, to justify that, Jorginho's got to be basically player of the season. And he's been very, very good, but his limitations have been exposed in this league defensively, and you just wonder in the biggest games, maybe they're getting found out a little bit.
A few pieces to pick out. We have to look at Sterling's performance. Sorry, it's on that England front page. There's a shot of Sterling and Matt Lawson's, as I mentioned it there. Really lovely interview of Henry Winter, but a sensational weekend for him. He could be going for Player of the Year. I mean, Aubameyang's now putting his foot in the contention for that too, but.
Well, Raheem Sterling is a key component of pretty much everybody's fantasy football team for a reason, and that's because of his end product. And this was the thing that used to be labelled against him, that he gets into great positions, but does he always make the right decision in the final third? Does he make the kind of runs, the sort of penetrative runs into the box to get on the end of chances? And that's the biggest change under Guardiola, is he makes those sort of runs inside rather than going outside looking for the ball. And he's just goals, assists every week. He's a fantasy football manager's dream. He makes us look like we all know what we're talking about.
And it's just so special to watch. It's that moment of acceleration, the belief. It's very much like the Eden Hazard runs.
And now he's ended that goal drought for England. You kind of hope that he can kick on it in the same way for England and really be a key player for Gareth as well.
Let's look at two elements. Jurgen Klopp saying sorry for his run onto the pitch, and we all love some excitement, but if we're going to chastise Jose Mourinho for one, then we have to replicate the other. And then maybe a bit of concern for, it was in here, it was just there. The Jordan Pickford blunder, and that the narrative, I think Andy Dunn putting out that even this early in the season it could be the sort of Gerrard slip moment. Has Jordan got the mentality to deal with being given that moniker? Yeah,
I think he has. I mean, look, we journalists often are critical of players or managers sometimes for not fronting up. Jordan came out and spoke to Merseyside press after that game. Very, very easy for him in stoppage time, losing the derby in that way, to hide and maybe put out some token nonsense on social media. But the fact that he actually fronted up, he answered the questions, that shows the character that he's got. And I thought he came an awfully long way sort of mentally in the summer with England. He was such a key part of everything that England did well, and that faith that Gareth showed in him in putting him in early when he only had 2 or 3 caps before the tournament, because he could play out from the back, because he had that sort of freedom of mentality to forget the goalkeeping curse that supposedly affected all these previous England goalkeepers, to go and play well at a major tournament. This is a setback for him, of course, but he's young enough, ugly enough and wise enough to move on from it.
So it's all done then? It's just a straight 2-horse race between Manchester City and Liverpool? I'm not, after that match between Tottenham and Arsenal, I'm actually less inclined to believe that. It's just me?
Well, I'm very much of the opinion that Manchester City are going to win the league by some distance. I think people seem to have forgotten that they won it by 19 points last season, and they're playing better statistically and almost aesthetically at times this season than last. Okay,
then will it only be Liverpool chasing them?
I think so. I think when you look at just the depth of squads, and when the Champions League kicks in again early next year, you think, or even European football with Arsenal and Tottenham, if Tottenham don't go through in the Champions League, you just think, don't know whether they've got the depth of quality to sustain a challenge when City can just rotate 2 or 3 in a row. Kevin De Bruyne has barely played this season. He was Player of the Year last year, and look how good they look. It's frightening how good they are. Liverpool are doing well. I think it's important for Liverpool to beat Everton and just keep that positivity, keep in touch. The longer that they can stay in touch with them, the more they'll believe that they can capitalise when City falter. But I think if City can get ahead over Christmas, they'll be away and gone by the time European football kicks in again.
And in the Women's Super League, Manchester City have taken points off Arsenal, so maybe they won't run away with it either after a 2-0 lead, as Suzanne Brack writes in The Guardian. So Manchester City not getting it all their own way, but they are chasing Arsenal, so it's not too much of a predictable game in the Women's League, which is good news for that too. Thanks for joining us, James Olley. You've got some work to do.
I have.
Thank you. Bye-bye.